What if one of the world's most culturally diverse countries was also one of its least known? What if a place with more than 100 living languages still relied on ancestral traditions to understand the land, the weather, and even volcanic eruptions? This is Vanuatu. Scattered across the South Pacific, Vanuatu is far more than a chain of tropical islands. It is believed to have the highest density of languages on Earth, where neighboring villages can speak completely different languages despite living only a few miles apart. Perhaps nowhere else does the past remain so deeply woven into everyday life. Ancient customs known as custom continue to shape how people resolve conflicts, protect forests, predict changing weather, and even live alongside some of the world's most active volcanoes. Traditions such as land diving, the ritual that inspired modern bungee jumping, are not performances created for visitors, but ceremonies that have carried meaning for generations. To understand Vanuatu is to discover a country where cultural diversity has survived globalization, where indigenous knowledge still guides daily life, and where one of the smallest nations on Earth quietly preserves a way of living that much of the modern world has already forgotten. One of the most remarkable things about Vanuatu isn't its volcanoes or turquoise lagoons. It's the way an entire civilization has managed to preserve extraordinary cultural diversity within such a small country. Across more than 80 islands, Vanuatu is home to over 100 indigenous languages, giving it the highest language density of any nation on Earth. On many islands, villages only a few miles apart may speak entirely different languages. Yet, this diversity has never fragmented the country. Instead, it has strengthened a shared identity built on respect for local traditions while embracing a common national future. Language in Vanuatu is far more than a tool for communication. It tells people where they come from, who their ancestors were, which land belongs to their community, and how they understand the world. Every language preserves stories, songs, ecological knowledge, and oral histories that have been passed down for centuries. To bridge this extraordinary diversity, the people developed Bislama, an English-based Creole that became the country's common language after independence. Today, Bislama allows hundreds of communities to communicate while each continues protecting its own linguistic heritage, a balance few nations have achieved. Perhaps the most fascinating lesson Vanuatu offers is that diversity does not always require uniformity. Here, dozens of cultures, traditions, and identities continue to coexist without losing what makes each unique. In a world where thousands of languages are disappearing, Vanuatu stands as one of humanity's most remarkable living archives of cultural memory, proof that preserving diversity can itself become a nation's greatest strength. To understand Vanuatu, you have to understand one word: custom. Often translated simply as custom, custom is far more than tradition. It is an unwritten system of values that shapes how land is owned, disputes are resolved, marriages are celebrated, forests are protected, and communities make decisions.
In many parts of Vanuatu,
custom remains just as influential as modern law, quietly guiding everyday life. One of its most fascinating features is the relationship between people and land. In Vanuatu, land is rarely viewed as private property that can simply be bought or sold. Instead, it belongs to families and clans across generations. Land represents ancestry, identity, and responsibility. To lose land is in many ways to lose part of who you are. This worldview also explains why conservation looks different here. Rather than relying only on government-protected parks, many communities declare certain forests, reefs, or fishing grounds taboo, places temporarily closed through customary authority. These traditional restrictions often protect ecosystems with remarkable effectiveness, allowing wildlife and marine life to recover long before modern conservation science promoted similar ideas. Even Vanuatu's famous land diving ceremony on Pentecost Island reflects this philosophy. While visitors often see it as an extreme adventure, the ritual was never created for entertainment. It marks the yam harvest, reinforces community bonds, and expresses respect for ancestral knowledge. Tourism may have introduced the ceremony to the world, but its deepest meaning still belongs to the people who continue practicing it. In Vanuatu, tradition is not a relic of the past. It is a living system that continues to evolve, proving that cultural heritage can remain both relevant and resilient in the modern world. Few countries live as closely with the forces of the earth as Vanuatu. Stretching along the Pacific Ring of Fire, the archipelago is home to some of the world's most active volcanoes. Islands like Tanna, Ambae, and Ambrim are shaped by eruptions that have created fertile soils, dramatic landscapes, and at times, devastating destruction. Entire villages have occasionally been relocated as volcanic activity intensified, reminding people that life here has always depended on adapting rather than controlling nature. Yet, one of the least known aspects of Vanuatu is how communities prepare for these hazards. Long before satellite monitoring and seismic sensors arrived, local people had developed generations of environmental knowledge. They observed changes in springs, vegetation, animal behavior, clouds, and volcanic activity to anticipate natural events. Rather than dismissing these traditions, scientists today increasingly work alongside local communities, combining indigenous knowledge with modern volcanology to improve disaster preparedness. This partnership has become an international model. On islands such as Ambae, evacuation planning and hazard management are far more effective when scientific data is interpreted alongside the lived experience of the people who know the land best. It is a powerful reminder that resilience is built not only through technology, but also through trust, memory, and local knowledge. Perhaps this is what makes Vanuatu so remarkable. While much of the world sees volcanoes as symbols of danger, the people here have learned to see them as both creators and destroyers, forces that demand respect, patience, and humility. In Vanuatu, surviving nature has never meant conquering it. It has always meant learning to live with it. In Vanuatu, surviving nature has never meant conquering it. It has always meant learning to live with it.
For centuries,
Vanuatu remained largely isolated from the outside world. But today, this small island nation sits at the center of some of the world's biggest conversations, from climate change and cultural preservation to indigenous rights and sustainable development. Perhaps the greatest challenge facing Vanuatu is not volcanic eruptions or tropical cyclones, but the gradual transformation of the Pacific itself.
rising sea levels, stronger storms,
Coral bleaching and coastal erosion threaten villages that have existed for generations. Yet, unlike the common narrative that portrays Pacific Island nations only as victims, Vanuatu has become one of the world's strongest voices calling for climate justice. In 2023, Vanuatu successfully led a landmark initiative at the United Nations that resulted in the International Court of Justice being asked to clarify countries' legal obligations regarding climate change.
for a nation of just over 300,000 people,
it was an extraordinary reminder that global influence is not measured by size, but by leadership. At home, the country faces another delicate challenge: embracing modernization without losing its identity. Tourism, urban growth, and digital connectivity have brought new opportunities, but they have also increased pressure on traditional land ownership, local languages, and custom.
Younger generations
Are growing up in a world far more connected than their ancestors ever imagined. Yet many communities continue to see their traditions not as relics of the past, but as practical guides for the future. That may be Vanuatu's greatest lesson.
in a rapidly changing world.
Progress does not always require abandoning tradition. Sometimes, the strongest foundation for the future is the wisdom that has allowed a people to thrive for thousands of years.
Vanuatu may be
Small on the map, but its story speaks to questions that every nation now faces. How to protect nature without sacrificing development, how to embrace the future without forgetting the past, and how to remain true to who you are while the world around you continues to change.
Vanuatu reminds us
That a nation does not have to be large to leave a lasting mark. Surrounded by restless volcanoes, remote islands, and the vast Pacific Ocean, its people have preserved custom as the living thread that connects their past to the present, while finding their own way to adapt to an uncertain future. Perhaps that is what makes Vanuatu truly unforgettable. Its greatest treasure is not simply its breathtaking landscapes, but the resilience of a culture that continues to endure through constant change. And in the end, Vanuatu, is more than a destination in the Pacific. It is a reminder that the true strength of a nation lies in its ability to protect its identity while embracing the future.